The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to TechGig webinar series, our endeavor to empower techies. We believe that sharing of knowledge is the key to enhance our skills and grow us as professionals. With this principle in mind, we've initiated a series of webinars conducted by industry experts to give you all a crisp insight of various domains. The topic of today's session is Task Management in MSP 2013. Our guest speaker today is Sachin Goswami. Sachin is associated as AGM Delivery in PMV Management Consulting Private Limited. He is a Microsoft Certified Technology Specialist on Microsoft Project 2010 and Microsoft Office 2007. He is also an ITIL V3 certified with 15 years of industry experience. He is a graduate in arts from Delhi University and has completed advanced diploma in software engineering. He has varied experience in IT industry as programmer, developer, systems analyst, team lead, project manager, group project manager, and delivery manager. He also has overseas work experience in the USA, UK, France, Singapore, and Germany. Sachin is in learning, training and development domain from last 15 years and has been catering to the best of the companies. He has global training experience and comes with experience of more than 600 corporate batches with 250 and more batches on Microsoft Project 2007, 10 and 13 and Oracle Primavera P6. So without further delay, I introduce you all to our guest speaker today. Over to you, Sachin.
Okay. Thank you so much for providing us the opportunity to join in here today. And this is good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sachin Goswami, and I'll be somebody who will take you through the next 45 minutes or so for in which we will discuss a lot of things about Microsoft Project 2013 in terms of task management, right? So I believe we all can see the screen in front of us. So this is where we can start off with. So this is going to be a practical, 100% practical demonstration. So I'll take only a few slides for the introduction part. The rest of the demonstration would be 100% practical, and I believe at the end of it, we'll be able to learn quite a few things here. So the agenda for today is here in the next slide. So that's the agenda for the next 45 minutes. So we're going to be talking about project task management in Microsoft Project 2013. Prior to that, I'll just take a couple of minutes for the introduction of the trainer and the company. In Microsoft Project, in the task management chapter, we're going to talk about 8 different topics today, which are divided like. So we're going to start with the project information part, the project calendar part. Then we'll talk about entering the task in Microsoft Project 2013. So I'll tell you the ways by which you can enter the task in that. Then we'll talk about grouping and ungrouping of the task. Then essentially we would talk about the task relationships, how to place a link, a relationship between the activities, and also about leads and lags, the concept, right? Then we'll also touch upon a few of the advanced parameters of a task, which are about milestones, deadlines, and constraints. And after all that, we would again have a questions and answers session. So without any further delay, I'm going to take you to the intro part. As said, my name is Sachin Goswami, and I'm into training and development from the last 15 years now. So I'm associated as the AGM Delivery with PMV Management Consulting from the last couple of years. Before that, I've been traveling the entire globe and teaching people, training them, assisting them on live projects. So I've been working as a project manager, a program manager, a lead, a project lead, a programmer, developer. So, and also touched upon various different industries. So I've been working in oil and gas, I've been working in sports, I've been working in IT, non-IT, telecom. So these are construction, infrastructure, So these are a few domains that I've already been through. I've seen live projects, help people in understanding how to use the technology in project management when it comes to the projects world around. So I've been training people in about 14 different countries. And the last endeavor that I did was in Saudi just a couple of weeks back, right? So for further introduction, so there's a brief snapshot that I've kept here. So it is, right now, as I said, I'm working as the AGM delivery with PMV. About PMV, well, this is an organization which has 3 different verticals. So we are into training and development. So we do a lot of trainings on Microsoft Project, Primavera. So we do trainings on PMP and of course Microsoft Office, right? And so this is one of the domains. Then we are also into consulting. So we do project management consulting for various different companies in India and abroad. And we are also associated with a couple of our global partners. For them, we also cater in the software implementation part in India. So as I said, our core services area in PMV is in training services, consulting, project management technology solutions, and staff augmentation. So these are the core areas, the focus areas that we cater to. These are some of the partners. So we are associated with QT&T Consulting Asia. It is in Singapore. We are partners in the Asia Pacific region. Then with Kenya Softwares in Sweden. So we are the authorized resellers of their products in India. So this is a brief about me and my company. So let's get back. These are some of the esteemed customers that we are dealing with, and we have served them in the past. So we're going to go back into the project task management in Microsoft Project 2013. So from here onwards, it would be a practical course, a practical demonstration in which we'll try and understand how do we actually work on Microsoft Project when we start a project, right? So I'm going to take a small pause here so that I can actually take it back to the actual tool. Okay. And I believe it is, everybody can see the screen now. So this is a Microsoft Project, and when we start Microsoft Project, so this is the first screen that we see. This is essentially called the Gantt chart area. So here there are familiar components that we have seen in the last versions. I mean, so if there are people sitting here who've been using Microsoft Project from a long time now, they should understand that. So it's quite similar to that of Microsoft Project 2010, 2007, 2003. Only a few differences are there between these all 4 versions. The major difference between 2007 and 2010 is of the interface. So initially up till 2007 we had a menu interface which has been changed and replaced by the ribbon interface in the new version. So that's essentially the first screen that we see when we start a project. But people, what they actually do is they straight away go into the task and they start writing their WPS in this, and they start creating a project plan, which is not exactly is the way. So it is essential for us to set the environment part first, and for setting the environment there are a couple of thumb rules. So we can start with the thumb rules here. The first and foremost thumb rule is that when we start the project, the first thing that we need to do is to mark our project information part, right? For marking the project information, there are a couple of ways of doing it. So in Microsoft Project 2013, you can do it by going into the backend view, which is given inside the file menu. So if you look at the file menu here, right, so you essentially see information panel, which is the first tab. On the information panel here on the right hand side, you see the project information part. So this is one area from where you can set the project information. Otherwise, you can actually go back into the projects tab again. So when you go back to the projects tab, you would see the same project information listed here in project information here, right? Now this dialog box which comes up might be different, and that basically depends upon what sort of version that you people are using, right? Just like because I'm using the professional one, so I see the enterprise custom field option area here, the gray part here, right? But if you are using a standalone version, So you would not have this area available to you. So the only area that you see is this much here, right? So these are the 7 different parameters that we need to set before jumping into, and going straight away writing the task in there. So these are the essential areas that we need to fill in. I'm going to talk about these one by one so that we can understand, how exactly to set them. The first parameter that we see is the start date. So start date is essentially the tentative start date of the project. Now, when I say tentative start date, that means because anything that I do in task management is a part of the planning only. Because once the baseline is set, only then it becomes a permanent start date of my project. So right now, because it is a planned start, so you can select a planned start by clicking on the drop down from here. So that essentially tells you that whatever date you select from here, that would be the first date of the first task, right? So if I select, let's say, and it is again a thumb rule in project management that so when you select a start date, that should be at least today's date, I mean the current date, or a future date, because as per the principle of project management, it is the planning which comes first and the execution afterwards. So if you are trying to plan a project which is already in the execution, so that means we started off the execution, now we are going back into the planning, right? So that's not essentially is the right or the correct way. So the correct way should be to start a project plan in the planning board, and that means to select a start date which should either be today's date or a future date, because we assume that in between we need some time for the planning, the activities, right? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to select, let's say, 9th, which is Monday, 9th of Feb 2015, 8 o'clock in the morning as my start date of the project. Now, interestingly, when I select a start date, then the finish date option here, as you can see, is disabled, right? And sometimes people wonder that when I can enter a start date, why can't I enter a finish date? Because again, so if any one of us have seen the critical path method, so he or she can connect to it that so there are only a couple of ways that you can plan your project with. Either you can go in a forward pass or you can come back in backward pass. So when you go into the forward passing essentially means that I have a start date, I have the list of the activities, I have the durations, I have constraints and relationship, and on the basis of that I can figure out what would be the end date of the project, right? So in that case, I would have a project plan in which I've been given the start date but not the finish date, and that's what exactly we are doing right now. So we have a start date and we are assuming that while we are planning, we actually going to plan it in a forward pass. Similarly, there are situations that we need to plan our project in the backward pass. Just for an example, and this is also a piece of information for the people here, that I'm the project manager of Kolkata Knight Riders. So that's an IPL team which plays cricket, right? And I've already done 3 seasons with them: IPL season 4, IPL season 5, and IPL season 7 as a project manager. And out of these 3, we won a couple of these, right? So what my point is that in an event like IPL, we know the start date of the project, the start of the first match would always be 4th of April, 4 o'clock in the evening, right? So that's already a deadline date that we have. So if I am to plan, and this is how generally I take it up. So if I have to plan a project, in order to make sure that the match starts on that day, I need to plan it backwards, because I already have a finish date in front of me, and which is 4th of April, 4 o'clock. So whenever I would start my project plan, I would always go backwards. So that means if on 4 o'clock at 4 April I need to do this, then probably the thing X I need to do 1 day prior, right? So I'm coming back essentially from there. This is called backward passing. And for the backward pass, I might have a finish date in that case. And from where I can select it, it is from the third option given here. As you can see, it says schedule from project start date. And if you click on the drop down, that says project finish date. So when I select the finish date here, you would immediately notice that now the project finish date is active. But at the same time, you would also notice that the start date has been disabled. So that is again following the same parameter, that either you can go in a forward pass or you can come back in a backward pass. So there cannot be a project which have both of these, which has a start date and a finish date. if you have a project which has a start date and a finish date both, so that means this is not a project, and at least it is not planning. That means you are trying to fit your activities in between 2 days, right? So this is not exactly the proper planning method, right? So essentially what I can do is I can select from here, from the schedule from, that either I want to go with the start date or a finish date of the project. It's like I'm going to go back here quickly because this is just for demonstration. I would like to do it in a forward pass. So what I did is that I've selected the start date from here again, and I've given 9th of Feb 2015 as the start date of the project. Now, if you look on the right hand side here in this area, so there are 4 different parameters given here as well. So which talks about the current date, the status date, the calendar, and the priority, right? So what is the significance of these 4 parameters here? So I'm going to talk about them one by one here. So the first one which says the current date, and the second one which says the status date, right? So these are the 2 options which are actually related to the project status part. When I talk about project status, I'm talking about quite a few things here, just like the project update date, right? So when I select the current date, which is again given as the today's current date as per the system's calendar, which is the 3rd of Feb, right? So this is the date which would keep on changing, and the day when you open your project and try to update it, the project would be updated as on that particular day, right? Whereas if I select a current date, a status date, that means it doesn't matter on what day I open my project plan. The earned values and the tracking part would always be, and the variance analysis that we would see, right, it would always be as per the status date. Now, the significance of the status date and why we have this parameter is that at times in a project, I don't want to see what is my today's earned value, right? I would rather would like to see what it was on a specific day. Just like we have status reporting periods in the companies. So sometimes if you want to have a quarterly report, which let's say 31st of March is the status date, right? So if I give 31st of March as the status date, and today is 15th of April, and if I try to check the earned values, it would actually check it on the basis of the status date. So you need to be very sure about which option to go with. So if you want to go on, earned values as on a current date, so you can select the current date option, or you can, let it remain as it is. Otherwise, if you want it on a particular status date, then you need to go here on status date area, and you can select a date from here, which whatever date you select from here would be the date on which the earned and the variance analysis could be calculated on. So these are the significance of these 2 elements which are there on the screen. Right. Then comes the third option on the right hand side, which talks about the calendars. So the calendars that we have are 3 by default, which are standard calendar, 24 hours calendar, and night calendar. Standard calendar is Monday to Friday, 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock, with 1 hour of lunch break in between, 12 to 1. That's the lunch hour, right? Similarly, when we talk about 24 hours calendar, so that's a rotational calendar of 3 different shifts, 8 hours each. So that makes it 24 hours. So this is a calendar which we generally follow at projects which are just like the turnaround projects. And so there are companies who do annual turnaround, and which is again a government norm as well, just like the petrochemical companies and the other companies. Now, because the turnaround is very crisp and small, it is only a 30 days project. So the work actually goes in 24-hour cycle. So there are 3 different shifts, and people, come and join their respective shifts, and they keep on working 24 hours. Right? So in that case, we can go with 24 hours of calendar. Then comes the night shift calendar. So this is a typical night shift calendar which runs in the night shift, right? So these are the basic calendars which are given by Microsoft Project to the users that they can start off with. But when we look at the perspective from the user, just like in India, typically we don't have an 8 to 5 shift, and we don't have a lunch break from 12 to 1. So in that case, we need to have something which suits our own requirement, right? And that is why I said initially that there are a couple of things that we need to set up before we go and enter our first task, right? So we are setting the project information here. The next step that we're going to do is to set our project calendar, right? But for now, I want you to remember that there are 3 calendars given, which are 24 hours, night shift, and standard calendar. We'll see the impact once we are done with the calendar part. We'll come back here and we'll see what is the impact there. right? Last parameter on the right hand side is about priority. Now priority can be ranged between 1 to 1000, right? The more is the priority given here is basically on the project level. I mean, so if I have a project which has a priority of 516 and there is another project which has a priority of 520, so if there is one shared resource which I want to use in both of these, that would essentially be given to the 520 priority. I mean, so the more is the priority, the more is in terms of, so you'll be a preferred project manager if you have more priority of your project, right? So you'll get more resources, shared resources, shared services, spaces, all that. So you get priorities in everything. But when it comes to a standalone machine, if you are not essentially working with the EPM system, the Enterprise Project Management System, so if you are working on a standalone machine, the priority 1 is equals to priority 1000. So there is no such difference in that in a standalone machine. But when it comes to the EPM, so these are very essential to fill in. And no project manager has the authority to write their own priority, because otherwise, to me as a project manager, all my projects would have a priority of 1000, right? So that is why it is basically defined by the organization on various different parameters that what will be the priority of this particular project. So this is the information part. So we have set all the informations here, the start date, the schedule from the current date. We are not going with the status date, and we have also selected the calendar from here. So I click OK, and for now I'm selecting, and I'm going with the standard calendar, right? So when I click OK, so that's my first part which has been set. And the moment I set it, so you would see an impact on the Gantt chart area. Although this is a blank screen right now, but there are a couple of things what you can see still. That if I just try to focus on these, so you would on the screen in this particular area, you would see that there are two different lines here. One is the green line which is given here, and you would also see a dotted line here, right? So this dotted line is the tentative start date of the project. This is the line which is coming exactly on 9th of Feb, which is the start date of the project, and the green one that we see here is the current date, and this is the area in between those which is said to be our planning area. So we have these many days in our hand, almost 5-6 days in our hand to plan for the activities, and then from Monday onwards, from here, from this area onwards, I'm going to start execution, right? So the first part has been done, the project information part has been set. Now I'm going to go back to the second thumb rule. As I said initially, there are a couple of thumb rules. So the second one is about the project calendar. So for going into the project calendar, what I need to do is I need to click on the project tabs here and need to go on this area which talks about change the working time. So when I click on the change the working time, that again pops out a dialog box which is here, right? So I just need to also make sure that you can also see the same screen. So that is why I keep a small pause in between, right? So that's the one area that we need to modify now. Now in which you would clearly see that it says change working time for calendar standard, which was the initial calendar that we selected in the project information. And it also says, it is in brackets, it says this is your current project calendar, right? But this is not exactly what I would like to follow. So what I can do is I can actually click on the right hand side here on this button which says create new calendar. So when you click on the create new calendar, you have a new calendar window which pops out. This is the window that you see now. And here you can actually write a name for the calendar. Just like for me, I'm writing, for an example, I'm writing it as my project cal, my pro cal. So that's my calendar. So I've highlighted P, C, and M in capitals so that it is easy for me to see the three different words in here. So it is my pro cal. So that's my calendar that I'm going to follow for my project. Now there are a couple of ways to create a calendar. Either I can create a new base calendar, or I can actually take a copy of a standard calendar or a night shift calendar, sorry, and can further modify it according to my own need. So what I'm essentially going to do here is I'm going to make a copy of this standard calendar and we'll try and see how to modify it. So when I click OK, you would immediately notice in this area again that now it says change working time for the calendar MicroCal. So it is no more for the standard calendar, but all changes that you're going to make now would be applicable only for MicroCal, right? So in the area here, in this area, you would see that there is a calendar given, which is for Feb 2015, which starts on 1st and ends on 28th. And on the bottom panel here, you have two different areas. One tab says the exception, the other one is for work week. Now, the core focus area is how you can set these two by using the options which are given in Microsoft Project 2013, right? So my idea is that I don't want a calendar which runs from 8 to 5. I want a calendar which runs, let's say, from 9:30 to 6:30, and which should have a 1 hour of lunch break in between, right? So that's my first motive, 9:30 to 6:30 with 1 hour of lunch break. And also, I would like to give some of the leaves that we have as standard in India, right? Because if I don't provide the leaves here, they would be called as the working days, and they would have a straight impact on the scheduling part. So when you schedule your task, right, and if you don't provide input inside the project cal that there is a holiday there, so it would consider that as a working day, right? So I need to be very sure about what all are the elements which can hamper my project in terms of scheduling, and I do need to mark them. Just like I'm going to start with the exception part here. So there are two different types of exceptions which can happen in a project. One is a non-working day, that means a holiday, and one might be a different working timing, right? So I'm going to touch upon both of these now. So as you can see, it's the month of Feb, and I know in the month of March there's a festival in India which is called Holi, right? So there are areas, especially in North India, so that's a very prominent festival here, right? So if there is a project which is running in North India, so I would essentially have a holiday on Friday the 6th, because this is the holy day, if I'm not mistaken here, right? So to me, it seems like 6th of March would be a holiday for Holi. So what I need to do is I just need to select this date, 6th of March. I'll come down to the exception area here and write the name of the exception, that why am I marking it as a holiday. So I can mark it as Holi, and I hit enter from here. Because there is only one day which was selected, you would notice that the start day and the finish day happens to be same, right? So it has selected one day as Holi, holiday, right? So Friday is now, as you can see here, March 6, 2015 is non-working, so that becomes a holiday. This is based on the exception Holi on the calendar MicroCal, right? And similarly, if there are other holidays, just like for an example, if I say in the month of April, there would be a holiday on 14th and 15th of April. So now I'm selecting both the dates just by clicking and dragging it. So I select 14 and 15 both, and I can mark an exception as some holiday. And this time around, you see that it actually selects it from 14th to 15th of April 2015, right? So this is how you can either go individually, right, on various different cells and can mark exceptions in this area, or what you can do is you can select a range that for say 14 and 15 that I have selected, and you can also mark them as exception holidays. So the base rule is that whenever you select a day or a group of days and go into the exception, that makes it the holiday. But at times I don't want a holiday. Just like in Delhi, because we all live in Delhi here in North India, so most of us are from Delhi only, right? So in Delhi there are elections on 7th of Feb. Now 7th of Feb here, as you can see, is Saturday, and I'm supposing that my working timings are from Monday to Saturday, not from Monday to Friday. So it's a 6 days a week. So I would have Saturdays as working, but because I have elections on 7th, so either my company would give me a leave, a holiday, so that I can go out and vote, or otherwise they would give me a half day, so that in the morning shift I can go out and vote, and in the afternoon I can come back and attend my office, right? In that case, it is not a holiday. It is a change in the working timings. So first what I'm going to do is I'm going to make all the Saturdays as working so that you can see the impact. For doing that, I need to go into the other section of it. The other section is called the work week. So the work week section essentially defines that what would be your work week, whether it is Monday to Friday or it is Monday to Saturday or it is Monday to Wednesday, right? So what exactly is your work week? How many number of hours you work in a week, right? So that can be defined from here. As you can see, because I've taken a copy of the standard calendar, so I already have a default work week section defined. But what I can do is I can actually select this default section and click on the details on the right hand side, which again opens up a new dialog box which talks about details of the default exception, right? So inside that, you would see on the left hand side, there are Sunday to Saturdays given, right? And I can choose from these three, I can choose from this left hand side panel that what all I want, what all days that I want to incorporate in my work week section. So here I'm selecting from Monday to Saturday because I want Saturday as a working day, right? And there are three options on the right hand side for that. One says use the project default times for these dates. The second says set days to non-working times. So if I select option number 2, the entire week from Sunday to Saturday becomes a non-working week, right? I don't essentially want to do it, otherwise when would I work? So I'm not going with the second one. The third one says set days to these specific working timings. So this is the one that I'm looking forward to. I want Monday to Saturday as working, but not on these timings. The timings which are given right now is from 8 to 12 and then from 1 to 5. So I'm going to change these. So I'm changing them from 9:30 to, that's 9:30 to 1 per se, and then from 2 to 6:30. So this is the time that I want for my project. I want to start my timings from 9:30 in the morning. I would have a lunch break from 1 to 2, and then I would again start from 2 to 6:30. Right? So this is how I'm going to do. Now, I've set it for Monday to Saturday, and I select OK from here. So you would immediately notice when you go back onto the previous screen, now you would notice that the gray part which was initially there on Saturday is now gone. So that means Saturday is again a working day now, and the timings are also different here. So it is from 9:30 to 1 and 2 o'clock up till 6:30 in the evening, right? So now because my Saturday is working, but I only on a specific day, just like on 7th, because we have elections on that day. So I want to give a half day on that election day. So I don't want to give a holiday. If I wanted to give a holiday, it's quite simple. I can go down here and write an exception here, and that would be a holiday, right? So I don't want to do it. So I essentially want to select this thing, the 7th, which is right now is working. March 7th is working. So what I'm going to do here is I'll write an exception. Let's say polling day, and when I hit enter, you would see that this day has been marked as March 7, 2015 is marked as a non-working day, whereas I didn't want to mark it as a non-working. I essentially wanted to make it a half day. So what I can do is I can select this exception, the polling day exception from here, and I can click on the details part, which is given here on the right hand side. This is another window which pops up here, right, which says details of polling day. Now it says set working times for these exceptions. The default option is given as non-working, but what I can do is I can select the second option which says working times. Then I can also select from here, right, that what I want as the working times for that day. So I'm not selecting 9:30 to 1. This is the one that I don't want, so I would simply delete it. And I'm keeping 2 to 6:30. So that's the time that I want to keep for that particular day. So in morning shift, I'll go out, cast my vote. By 2 o'clock, I'll reach my office and work there up till 6:30 in the evening. So this is how you can set the details of an exception, right? If you don't essentially want to make it a holiday, you can go into the exception details and you can set the timings that you want for that particular day. In the second portion below here, it also gives you the option for applying a recurrence pattern to it. Recurrence means that if you want to have the same exception repeated in the project calendar, so you can also do that. But for doing that, it gives you basically 4 different options. So if you want to do it daily, you can do it daily. Otherwise, you can do it weekly, monthly, and yearly, right? So when you select weekly, so you can select recur every 1 week, 2 week, after 3 weeks, you can decide upon how exactly, you want the recurrence in your project for that particular exception. But right now I'm not going with any of these because I know that polling actually happens once in 5 years, and we are not sure about on what date it can happen, right? So I cannot select or predict this exception, and that's why I'm not going for the recurrence part here, right? So I'm just clicking OK from here. Now you would see that on 7th, if you go back and see that on 7th, the working times on 7th March 2015 is from 2 to 6:30 now, right? And for the rest of the options, so I have a Holi on 6th March, and I have, so I actually did it on 7th of March. I wanted to do it on 7th of Feb. But anyways, the idea was to make you understand that how we do it, and I believe it is understood. So this is how I've set my calendar here, right? So this is my ProCal, that's my own calendar now. So when I click OK from here, right, the calendar has been set, that has been made, but it is still not applied to my project. So what I need to do is I'm going to go back to the project information part now, right? And you would see in the calendar section, I wanted you to, remember that there are 3 different calendars which are given here. Now when you click on the drop down, you would see 4 of these. So you have 24 hours, you have night shift standard, plus you also have my ProCal as the calendar. So what you can do is you can actually select my ProCal from here, right, and click OK. And the moment you do it, now your my ProCal calendar 9:30 to 6:30, Monday to Saturday has been applied to your project. So the environment has been set. Now it is the time when you start entering your first task. At times people actually come back to me and tell me that, okay, so this is the area on which now the project calendar has been applied. But they still are in a dilemma that still on the Gantt chart area here, we still see the Saturdays and Sundays as the non-working times. So these gray areas, right? This is happening because the calendar has been applied to the project, not to the Gantt chart. So there is a separate area which is there in the Gantt chart here. So when you make a right click here, you would see there is an area about the non-working time which is given here. So you can click on the non-working time. You would see the time scale dialog box. From here, if you notice that it still is calendar as standard here. So what I can do is I can actually click on the drop down and can select my ProCal. In brackets it says my project calendar. So when I select this and click OK, now you see that only Sundays has a gray band. It is not there on the Saturday, except of the exceptions that we have. So when you go ahead here, you would see the exception days, just like Friday 6th of March has been marked as a holiday because that is being holy, and we have marked it essentially meaningfully, we have marked it as a holiday. So you would still see this exception marked in your Gantt chart area as well. So this is how you can create and apply your project calendar and project information part. Now it is the time when you start working on your project, right? You again need to be very careful when you start entering your first task, because there are 2 different modes for entering the task. So you have manually scheduled task and auto scheduled task. Just like in the bottom area, the green bar here, you would notice where my cursor is right now. So if you click on this, so that gives you 2 different options. So one says auto schedule, the other one says manually schedule. Now the auto schedule task is in which the dates of the start and finish are being calculated by Microsoft Project, right? Whereas in manually scheduled task, the task dates are not automatically updated. That means, Microsoft Project gives you a feature that if you want to keep a task just like a placeholder, you can still do so. And please remember that the manually scheduled task is the default way for writing in the task in Microsoft Project 2013 and 2010. So if you're sure about what your activity is going to be like, so you can select auto schedule rather than going into the manually schedule, right? So here now I've selected the auto schedule from here. Now this is the time when I'm I'll start entering my first task. It's like, for an example, I start a home construction project, for an example, right? So I start like, so I would have an area which would be earthwork. So this is an exercise that we need to do prior to starting the project. We will create the WBS on a piece of paper so that we can identify which would be the major blocks, right? So I'm starting as earthwork section, then I would have, let's say, structure section, then I would have finishing section, then I would have, let's say, services, external development, and finally I would enter my house. And here as well, I mean, so before the earthwork section, I also wanted to have one more thing, which was my initial milestone, which I wanted to have as, let's say, start of the construction, right? Now, because I don't have a space above the earthwork, right? So how can I insert a task here? For inserting a task in Microsoft Project, it's pretty easy. So what you can do is you can simply hit the insert key from the keyboard, just like I did right now, and it would insert a blank row above the task that you have selected. And please remember, it cannot go below the task. It would always be inserted above the task, right? So you need to be very careful when you select a task that, wherever you want a blank row to be created, you always need to select a task below to this, right? So just like before the earthwork, I want to have, let's say, start construction. Similarly, inside the earthwork section, there would be other elements, just like if there are people sitting from a civil background, they can relate to it, right? So there would be excavation, there would be foundation, there would be backfilling, and so many of these activities. So if I want to insert those activities inside earthwork, so what I can do is I initially need to insert a few rows, just like I've inserted 3 of these, and I would say excavation. And the formula was same, so I just hit insert key thrice in my keyboard. So I would have excavation, foundation, and plinth. So let's say these are the 3 tasks that I want to keep inside the earthwork section. Now, to put them inside the earthwork section, what I essentially need to do is I need to select these 3 tasks from here. Need to go back into the task group, the task tab here, right, in which there is a schedule area. So that's the schedule area here, right? Inside that schedule area, you would notice, so there is a button called indent task. Alt Shift and right is the shortcut for it. So if you hit from the keyboard, Alt Shift and right, so that would indent it. So when I select this and indent this thing, so you would notice that the earthwork now has these 3 tasks inside it. So it becomes a WPS element, or in other terms, in Microsoft Projects term, we call it the project summary task. So that becomes a summary task now. You see, right? Similarly, you can have a few things inside structure. Just like I'm going to have a couple of these things, just like ground floor structure, and I would have first floor structure, or I would simply mark it as FF for first floor structure. So again, if I need to take them inside the structure part, I'll select both of these and hit the indent button again. So now they would move into the structure part. Similarly, if I want to take them out of the structure, I can select them and can hit this button, which says outdent the task. Alt, Shift, and left is the shortcut key for this. So if I select these 3 keys from the keyboard, Alt, Shift, and left, then it would outdent it and they would become normal tasks, just like I did right now. So it is out of the structure now. So these are the normal tasks now. So if I want to make them inside a group, so I'll simply do indent, or to take them out, I'll do the outdent. So this is how we can indent and outdent, group and ungroup the task. Before that, we saw how we can insert the task, right? Similarly, now comes a very important concept, which talks about the relationship part. So how do we relate our task in Microsoft Project 2013. Before relating them, I would like to go and give it some duration. Just like for start the construction, it is not essentially a task. This is just an indication that from this date onwards, I'm starting my construction work. So this is a milestone task for me. For marking a milestone by default, what I can do is I can mark the duration as 0 days. So if I mark the duration as 0, so that becomes a starting milestone. Similarly, enter house was a milestone to me. So I can select another 0 days from here as the duration, and that becomes a milestone. And you can see that here. So this is the initial milestone, and that's the finishing milestone. Now in between these are the tasks that I need to perform. So I'll go with the excavation, just like so I need, let's say, 5 days for excavation. I need 20 days for foundation, and I need, let's say, 25 days for the plinth. So I can simply go and give the durations. The duration by default is in days, but you have a flexibility that you can also give the duration in minutes, in seconds, in hours, in days, in weeks, and in months, right? So you can simply go down just like ground floor structure. So if it is only a 5 hours job, I can simply write 5 HRS and hit enter. That becomes a 5 hours job, right? And if it is a 5 days job, so I would simply write 5 space D and hit enter. So that becomes 5 days job. But nevertheless, the ground floor structure would take more time. So that would take at least 35 days. Similarly, the first floor would take 35 days. The overall finishing, because I have not distributed it into plaster, paint, brickwork, all those activities, right? So overall finishing, I'm considering, let's say, 50 days. Another 45 days for services, 12 days for the external development. So this is how I've given, because this is just a sample project, right? So I've taken only 12 activities in that, right? And I've given dates to it. But interestingly, you would notice that here, the start date and the finish date, both of these have the same dates. There's like the start construction is at 9th of Feb, and the end date of the project is again 9th of Feb, because you would notice that all the activities here are actually starting from the same day here, right? Why? Because they do not have a relationship in between. So to connect them into the relationship, this is the column that we use. This is called the predecessor column, right? For marking a predecessor column, you need to be sure about what all 4 types of relationships that you have, and you should be well versed with, and you should have a level of understanding on what exactly a finish to start and a start to start relationship is. We'll not be able to discuss it right now because this is quite a time-consuming area, but I'm assuming that we all understand what basic relationships are. So I'm just going to go and show that, you know, how these can be related inside the project plan. So I'm going to start with the excavation, because start construction is just a milestone, so it is not a work, right? So when I talk about excavation, that would certainly start when I start the construction. So that would have a finish to start relationship with the construction. Now the ID of the construction is 1 here, right? So I need to write here 1, FS stands for finish to start. But because finish to start is the default relationship in Microsoft Project, you don't have to essentially write FS. So even if I write it and I hit enter, sorry, so when I write 1 FS and hit enter, you would see that it still shows only 1. So it is not showing me FS, because as I said, so that's the default relationship, right? For the rest of the relationships, you need to write it as SS, SF, or FF, right? But if you are taking a lead time or a lag time between the activities, then in that case you need to also write FS plus 3 days or minus 5 days, whatever, right? So after the excavation, I'm going to start the foundation. So the relationship between foundation and excavation would again be finished to start. So I'm simply writing 3, which is essentially is the task ID or the task number of excavation here, right? So when I hit enter, now you would see that these blue cells, which determines that the start date of foundation task has been changed, because the excavation is finishing on 13th of Feb. That is why you would see the foundation is now starting on 14th of Feb, because that ends at 6:30 in the evening on 13th. The next day you start the foundation work, and you would see here on the Gantt chart as well that now it has been related in a finish to start relationship here. So the task excavation starts here, finishes here, and then it connects to the foundation here. So the foundation essentially starts from this area now, right? So now when I go back to the next one, just like plinth, now the plinth can be done only after when the foundation is done, right? So what I can do is I can actually go down here on the relationship part and can write number 4. So it would connect it to the plinth. Now you would notice that for these 3 tasks, the overall duration is 50 days, right? So now it is 50 days here. So once this excavation and earthwork section is finished, we will start with the structure part here, in which we have the ground floor structure and first floor structure. In the ground floor structure, again, there can be a couple of things. So we have the columns and we have the slab casting, but I'm not writing these things because that would actually make it too long, right? So what I'm trying to do here is that I'm going to start the ground floor structure part when the plinth part of the earthwork section is done. So now I'm trying to connect these 2 sections, right? But in Microsoft Project, there is a facility that the plinth, because it is the last task, it also has the same end date, which, okay. So now when you look at here, that the end date of both of these tasks are same. So what can be done is that we can actually, rather than connecting it with the plinth, I can actually connect it with earthwork as well. And Microsoft Project is the only tool in the market which gives you or allows you to connect an activity with a WPS element. So what I can do is I can have a finish to start relationship between the earthwork and the ground floor structure. The earthwork is ID number 2. So if I write ID number 2 from here, you would notice that it is now starting after when the earthwork is finished. The earthwork gets finished at 1 p.m. on 9th of April, and this is why you would see that this also starts from 2 p.m. The ground floor structure starts from 2 p.m. on the same date, right? So this is how you can connect things in Microsoft Project, right? So we have other relationships as well, just like for example, if I want to start services when I start the ground floor structure, so I can go in a start-to-start manner as well, that the moment I start the ground floor structure, after a couple of days, I can start the services. So the essential relationship would be start-to-start with a lag of 2 days. So what can be done is the idea of the ground floor structure is 7. So I can write 7, I can say start-to-start plus 2 days. So that 2 days is the lag time. So the moment the ground floor structure starts, after 2 days of it, I can start the services. Because the ground floor structure is starting on 9th of April, you would see that services starts from 11th of April, which is 2 days after the start of the ground floor structure, and exactly on the same time. So this is how you can define the relationship between the activities. So I actually wanted to elaborate it more, but we have a time constraint, right? So this is why I'm now, going to see a few of your questions so that they can also get answered.
Thank you, Sachin. Thanks for the insightful presentation. I would request you to quickly take up the questions now. Please read them out, read the questions and their answers so that all our users may listen to your commendable insights.
Okay. So I'll try and answer a few of these. So there's a question which says, please show differences, practical differences between actual start and finish date and the baseline start and finish date. That has been asked by Mr. Abdul Latif, right? So I would definitely like to answer that. But the only thing is, for that we actually need to have a baseline project plan with us, right? So initially the plan that we have created in this 40 minutes workshop is only for the task management. A project plan means which includes the task, the resources, the cost, all those elements. So when you have a complete project plan ready, right, then only you'll be able to see that when you start tracking a project, then how exactly, the baseline and the actual task are different from each other. So unfortunately, right now, you'll not be able to do that. But once you have a baseline and you start tracking a project in real time, just to make sure that you can do it, if it is possible for you, you can actually join in some of my live classes in which we demonstrate all these areas. That's a 2 days complete class, so probably in that you'll be able to have more insight onto this. Anyways, thank you so much for asking this question, Mr. Atul. And Mr. Soman Day asked me a question that how to find the critical path in any of the project. So that's a very wise question, a very good question here. There are a couple of ways to do it. One is just like if I just try and show it to you here on the screen, you would see that there is a network diagram given here. So there's a network diagram on the left hand side which can actually show you the critical path. Now as I switch this screen, and I believe all of us can see this screen, right? So when you go down here, you would notice, so if I simply reduce the size of the zoom that I have, because I just wanted to show you how it exactly looks like. Now you can see that. You see that this is a sample project only, and there are activities which are still not connected to each other, but the activities which are in connection would show you a clear red path here. So this red path that you see is called the critical path of the project. So this is the one way of seeing it. You can also go back into the Gantt chart here. In the Gantt chart also, on the Gantt area here in the chart area, when you go to the formats part, that's the Gantt chart tools option. So you have critical task option, which you can select from here, which would immediately show you what all are the critical activities in your project. So as you can see here now, that the critical activities in my project has again been marked as red. So that's my critical path of the project. So this is how I can see that. Thank you so much for asking that question, Mr. Sumande. Now there's another question here, which is from Mr. Sajid Kumar. He asked me start date on Feb 10th, finish date on May 2nd week. So I could not understand this question properly. Okay, if my project has start date and finish date, then was it the procedure? So what I could understand with this question is that if my project has both of these, the start date and the finish date, is it not a correct procedure? I don't know if this is something that you wanted to ask, but what I understood is no, it is not, because if you are in the planning phase, you need to plan it either in a forward pass or in a backward pass. So if my boss comes back to me and says, okay, so I need to start a project on 1st of April, I need to finish it on 15th of April, please create a project plan. So I'm sorry, I cannot do that, because that is only after the planning it would be decided what would be either the end date of the project or the start of the project. Because if you are giving me both of these are called constraints, right? So you are giving me a start date constraint and a finish date constraint. I actually wanted to talk constraint in detail in this section, but the elaboration actually would take another hour or so, so that's why I will not be able to take it up right now. But I'm looking forward that on the next series of webinar, we'll definitely touch upon that part. So that's what it is, Mr. Sajid. So if you've been asked to do both of these things, then it is essentially, you are simply fitting your activities between these two dates. You are not planning it. Thank you so much for asking the question. Now I have the last question here, which is from Matthews, right? If the project gets delayed, and what would happen if we have selected the finish date? Will the baseline be changed? No, Mr. Matthews, the baseline never gets changed as long as you don't want to change it yourself, right? So baseline remains the same. The project delay actually comes into variance, right? And that would be, let's say my project gets delayed by, let's say, 5 days, right? So that would be a 5 days of finishing variance rather than shifting my baseline with 5 days. So these were the questions that has been asked. So if you have any other question, you can probably, because this is here. So we were at the question and answers part here, right? So if you have any further questions, you can probably contact us on our website. I would request you to please go and check the website www.pmventure.com. You can also get in touch with our team at 8826890786. So that's the number. I'm repeating it again, 8826890786. And you can also, for further information about our website, further information about our webinars and the trainings that we do, you can go and check the calendars at www.pmventure.com. And alternatively, you can also mail us at info@pmventure.com. So we have a calendar listed there at the website. You can see the public workshop dates from there. The next public workshop date for Microsoft project in Delhi that we're going to have is between 21st and 22nd, Saturdays and Sundays of Feb 2015. Right, so that would be Saturdays and Sundays, 21st and 22nd of February 2015. So for more information, please drop a mail at info@pmventure.com or visit our website at www.pmventure.com. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for taking out the time. I believe it was a healthy learning discussion, right? I'm looking forward to hear from you more in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sachin. Thanks for this insightful presentation. It was indeed a great session. I would also like to thank all our participants for your support in making this webinar a success. The recording of this webinar will be available on techgig.com very soon. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks so much.